My name is Chris, and I am from the Mixam team. I'll be your host and moderator for today's session, crowdfunding comics from idea to print. Just a little bit about what to expect. This event is all about bringing your comics to life, starting off from a compelling crowdfunding campaign all the way to a beautifully printed book that you end up kind of selling to your customers. Um, just a little bit about the lineup for today. We do have myself from the Mixam team. We have Sam, my co-host. He is the comics outreach lead at Kickstarter. He's worked with countless creators to help them launch successful campaigns. And we also have Xander, who is a very successful comics creator who has used both Kickstarter and Mixam to launch his campaigns and also deliver high quality books to his growing fan base. Before we jump in, just to go over a few housekeeping details. Firstly, we will be recording today's session and we will send out a link to everyone within a couple days. So stay tuned for that in the days to come in your email. If you're comfortable, feel free to keep your video on so we can see your faces, but please remain on mute throughout the session. We also ask that you be respectful to your fellow attendees and avoid any demeaning, discriminatory, or harassing behavior in the chat. In the last 20 minutes of today's session, we'll open things up for a Q&A, so start thinking about your questions now. To submit questions, we ask that you use the Q&A section at the bottom of your Zoom toolbar. If you see a question that you'd also like answered, you can also upvote it in there, and we'll make sure to prioritize the ones that have, a bit of high interest first. I'm sure we'll have lots of questions towards the end of the session, so we'll definitely do our best to answer as many as we can within the time limit. Also, feel free to use the chat box throughout the session to drop comments, reactions, or observations. Our team will also use the chat box to help share some links, resources, and other things that are mentioned throughout the presentation. If you do have a question, please try to drop it in the Q&A box to let others upvote it and help keep things organized. And without further ado, I think we can kind of get things kicked off here, and I'll kick it over to Sam.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, if we could go to the next slide, Yvonne. Let's go. I just want to go over our agenda today, what we're talking about. Chris already previewed this a bit in the tee up, but we have a section about launching your Kickstarter project, tips on how to crowdfund and plan your production, budgeting, and fulfillment, tips for preparing and printing your comic, the benefits of working with a trusted print partner like Mixam, and then we'll get into some real world insights from Xander. We've got a lot of questions teed up for him. So why don't we kick it over to the first section of launching a project on Kickstarter. And I saw in the chat already that a lot of people already crowdfund, but I wanted to, for anybody who's curious, who hasn't gone through the process before, talk about why you may want to crowdfund. Yvonne, if we can go to the next slide. So crowdfunding really is, at its core about creative freedom and independence, right? Anyone from anywhere. I saw that we have some folks on the call from Indonesia, from the Philippines. Crowdfunding really allows you to launch a project and bring ideas to life without giving up a lot of your equity or creative independence that you might have to sacrifice if you're working with, say, a major publisher or some other folks who are already in the comics business. We really want to give you a chance to tell your story. So how you came up with your idea, why you're the right person to bring to life, and bring it to that interested audience. And that can be as broad as anybody who might love, horror comics, or I'll just say in my case, I'm a creator myself. In addition to working at Kickstarter, I made a tabletop role-playing game called Henshin, a Sentai RPG, to essentially make your own Power Rangers. And my story is I wanted to make a game that was more about the progression of what it means to be your hero and what growth comes from the character rather than the punching and kicking. And not everyone's interested in that, but the people who were really flocked to it and really came to it. And I had a successful Kickstarter campaign to fund that book. So, crowdfunding really allows you to put something specific out into the world, capture the attention of the people who are interested in it, and continue to just build up your profile, build up an audience. If you have existing titles and you continue to build up Kickstarter campaigns, you can start selling those backlist titles, really introduce people to your breadth of work, and it just allows you to thrive in a way that other traditional means may not allow you to. Let's go to the next slide to get into some more specific designing campaign tips. So first, and I focused a bit on this in the last slide, but the first thing that you want to do when you're designing your campaign is really figure out specifically what you want to make. Kickstarter, at its core, every campaign is about making a thing that has not existed before in the creative space. So whether that is repackaging older material into a hardcover collection, or it is kicking off a new series, which we see often on the site, you really want to hone in on what that specific core product is, because that's going to allow you to build the rest of your campaign around that. Once you've nailed that down, the next step is to create a budget. So figuring out how much things are going to cost to put together, what specific items you would like to make. And that's anything, in the case of comics production, from am I at a point where I'm starting out with a campaign where I need to hire an artist, hire a colorist, hire a letterer? Is the work already complete? Am I just focusing on printing? What formats do I want to print in? Is it a trade paperback? Is it a hardcover? Is it single issues? Do you want to do stickers? What have you? Just getting a sense of what this is going to cost you, both in production and shipping, and any other work that you might need, is that key next step, because that's going to help you determine your total campaign raise. And then once you have that budget, you're going to start thinking about what rewards are you going to offer? How are you going to incentivize people to help you make that goal? Again, really focused around that core product, right? We want those rewards to be maybe a digital version of that product. And then the next step is the physical tier. Maybe then there's a bundle with existing work, or a multiple bundle of that tier. But thinking around how can you structure those rewards to really incentivize people. And that's a great place for you to get super creative on Kickstarter with what you can offer. And we got some examples from previous campaigns that I wanted to note, just to kind of get some wheels turning with folks. So if we could go to the next slide. One thing that we see that's pretty, I like to think is pretty common and is a very fun way to engage with your audience, is the idea of a draw-in or cameo tier. So I pulled an example from the Iron Barge, which is a really great comic from Megan Carter that was funded last year, where she offered a pet cameo tier for $175 Canadian, which is roughly about 126 USD. But she offered a limited tier at 6 slots, where she would draw on your cat or your dog into the book, and you would get a copy of the book in addition to show your friends. So again, focusing on what's that creative product, or what's that product that's going to come out, but what is a unique way to offer an experience that no one else is going to be able to get. And it's great to see too that she sold out of that. It's a really attractive thing, especially when you make it limited. It creates that sense of FOMO, right? Someone might not be able to get it. And if you really love your pet, like I do, or I know a lot of other pet owners do, having an original piece of art of them is a really fun thing. All right, let's move on to the next one. So the next one, this is definitely not something I've seen very commonly, but I thought was so unique and wanted to point out. John Court, who ran See You Next Year last year, a very cool Halloween-focused project, he offered as a reward brush packs and reference material from his book. As you guys can imagine, the comics community is insanely creative, and we have all kinds of people, from writers to artists to people who do everything themselves. And I thought this was such a cool way to share process and share, just really the look and feel and vibe of the book for a pretty affordable amount, $15 to get 20 brushes, some of his reference material. I thought it was just a really great way to engage the community where it's at, and encourage, so much of Kickstarter is about the community encouraging itself to continue to create, and us wanting to create a space where newer creators can come in and get started on a project themselves. John himself, this was his first Kickstarter, so to be able to come to the table with material to offer to other folks to help sort of build the wider artistic community on Kickstarter is just a really fond, something I'm very fond of and excited to get out there, and wanted to share in the hopes of, having more of that. Right. And our final example, again, is a cool kind of unique thing, but I think it will land with some people who've got that more of a transmedia experience of Andy Soriano, who is a producer, was a producer on, I think, Rise of the TMNT, during COVID started playing RPG with his friends, and that turned into a comic. So he turned his role-playing game experience into a comic called Lost Company. And one of the great things that he did, in addition to not only printing and selling the book, is he made adventure modules and miniatures, a system agnostic game available as part of the rewards. So you could get that in addition to the book, and you could get 3D printed minis here of some of the characters which are featured in the book. Obviously, pretty specific to his project and what he put together, but I think it's really great. There's so much crossover between comics and games, and so much potential there, that it's really fun to see this kind of come up naturally outside of, you know, a company driving it or it being more of a licensed material. Just a real original game sort of birth full circle, a comic of a game coming back to offer its own sort of game element to the public, I think is really neat. So wanted to bring that out as well. All right. So with those, let's get into the next 3 steps for designing your campaign. Once you have a sense of the rewards, when you have a sense of what you're making and how much it's going to cost you, it's time to sit down and write a very clear short story about what you're making. You know, I illustrated in some of those examples, like Andy's example, he had time to create a story because he wasn't working as much during COVID. And here are, if you take a look at his campaign page, there's info just about like how that was born, the love he had with his friends, and the fun he had with his friends during that time. All of that stuff can really be communicated very clearly through the Kickstarter. And it's a great way, you know, Kickstarter is you as a person, as a creative person, are talking to other creative people and wanting to get them to buy into your idea and the development of your creative piece or your creative output. And just you want to find ways to inspire them and share a very human element of your creative story. Once you've got that written out, it's time to create imagery so that you can use on your campaign page. I generally recommend for comics campaigns, it's great to show 3 to 5 pages of the comic if you have that available. It's also great to just show like in progress sketches or covers or ideas of what you have. You really want to get people, you want to whet their appetites, right? To make sure that they have a clear understanding of what the look and feel of the book is. In addition to that, though, it's really great to create graphics for what the rewards are going to be. So clearly having a mock-up of the book, if you're able to do that, having a mock-up of stickers, any other material that you make there, and having clear information about what that is going to cost you. Or what that is going to cost somebody. I also encourage people to put a graphic about shipping on the page if they're able to. Some larger companies, and I'm trying to get, you know, independent creators to adopt this, will have a grid that breaks down, you know, if I'm shipping internationally, what tier at what region is going to cost X amount, so people can have a clear understanding about their total financial spend, right? Creating imagery, excuse me, and a clear story is a great way to just be crystal clear about what you're presenting and what you're expecting from your backers, so there's no surprises. Because I think one of the worst things that can happen in a Kickstarter campaign is people are confused and upset if they don't have a clear picture of what they're getting into. So this is a great way for you to just lay out all that information at the top of the campaign. And then last but not least, we very highly encourage people to create a project video. And, you know, this is to say, like, you don't have to hire a videographer. You don't have to get a professional person to like come into your studio and shoot you drawing. You can create something on Canva. If you have images of your comic, you can get some royalty-free music. I would say over the course of a couple of days, you could spin up a very attractive 30-second video that just gets people excited. And it is also an incredible piece of marketing that you can use to promote your campaign. So we really encourage people to create a video, and that I think is what I've got in terms of designing your campaign. So at our next slide, I think we were going to take a look at, we wanted to use an example project page, and we have Xander on here, and Xander did, I would say, a really amazing job at laying out all the information in the way that I just talked about, right? There's great examples of what cameraman looks like. There's clear information about what the rewards are going to be. And it just feels like you really know what you're getting into, and it's very easy to buy into the idea. So I would definitely encourage you guys to check out cameraman number one as an example if you're looking to build out a campaign page for the first time, because I think it really gets the point across. So for my next section, I'm going to give you some of my tips and tricks for planning your production, budgeting, and fulfillment. And, this is just I find a helpful list that applies to any and all campaigns. So I wanted to share these findings with you. And then with Chris, we'll get into some more specifics about getting your comic ready for print and production. We can go to the next slide. All right. So my first tip in planning is, and this applies primarily to the budget and figuring out what you want to do, is do your research. I think it's very easy to, in comics printing and prep, find maybe one printer, get a price that feels reasonable, and you feel like you're good to go from there. Or same with any other, manufacturing. I encourage people to do their research, get a couple of different quotes, see what else is out there, and get some more information about what you can produce, because it's a case of you don't know what you don't know, right? So doing your research allows you to just make a better informed decision, and that way you feel confident about what you're producing moving forward. And ideally, you have a point of contact that you can rely on at a company like Mixam, where you can ask really any question, right? And make sure that you're getting an answer that feels like you have a stable partner with you to be able to move forward. My next tip, and I talked about this with writing your story and the rewards, is just be crystal clear with your backers about what you're producing and what they can expect from you, right? And that applies to, you want to have a clear expectation set up at front about here's what I'm producing, here's when you can expect it. But we often find, because of everything that happens in the world, sometimes Kickstarters will either go off the rails or you'll hit a delay. Being crystal clear in an update about, hey, this thing came up and I had a delay, or this happened to me on one of my Kickstarter projects last year. I had a family emergency where I had to be out of town for about 2 months. That put a delay on my project. But being clear with people about what is going on in your life really evens the playing field in terms of, if there are going to be delays, people have an understanding as to why that is happening. And there's a very human element to that too, right? Like I said, you're a person bringing your creative project to Kickstarter, and people are very understanding if they have a clear idea about what's going on in your life. So just don't hesitate to be clear with folks as you're working through a project. Next, when you're planning out your project in terms of your timeline and your budget, I encourage people to add a buffer. I've been a project manager for about 10 years or so. I always go with sort of a standard 20% buffer to any of my budgets and timelines, because things will go wrong. No matter how well you plan a project, in my experience, something out of your control will go wrong. And having that time to be able to either absorb that cost or even just give yourself a break, in between steps, is really helpful in just keeping this as a manageable experience, and ideally something that you want to do again. So be sure to build in a buffer. I recommend 20%. That's just me, but just make sure that is included in there. And then I've touched on it a couple of times, but plan for things to go wrong. Things will go wrong. Building a buffer is really great in there. But also having a solid support network of either other creators or friends and family who will be able to help you if you need additional help. Don't feel like you have to take on challenges alone if things were to go wrong. Be willing to just reach out and ask people for help, and be clear about what your needs are, right? If you need help packing stuff up because it's you got way more orders than you need to, schedule like a packing party at home and watch a couple movies and put things together, or just really anything. But just challenges will come up, and it is not going to be the end of the world for your project, but you just need to learn to roll with those punches and expect that is just part of the project process, right? And then lastly, kind of going into that, or expanding upon that, plan out your stretch goals like they will happen. I've heard from a couple of creators, and I always think this is funny, where they're like, stretch goals always get me. I'm like, well, you're the one who set them up. I don't know why they're getting you. So I encourage people to plan out their stretch goals, especially in your budgeting phase, right? Maybe you want to change the cover stock on a single issue that you have, or if you have a hardcover, you want to add gilding to it or some other enhancements. I would encourage you to get the budget numbers for those well ahead of time while you're in that budgeting phase, so you have an understanding of how much is this going to cost? Will it add significant time to the process if we make it? But just treat those like they are things that will happen, because it'll just make your planning and production process all the more simple. And that's what I've got in terms of my tips for planning. I think now I'll turn it over to Chris.
Awesome. Thank you, Sam. Yeah, so just myself from Mixam, I'm just going to run you guys through some tips and tricks on how to prepare and then print your comic. We can jump to the next slide. Oop, cool. So yeah, just some things to kind of consider when actually preparing your print files. This is just kind of a basic checklist of steps that we have available on our website as well. When it does come to preparing your print files, the first thing you're going to want to consider is using high resolution PDFs. This is for, any artwork or any photos that you might be including in your comic itself. For these, we recommend everything at 300 DPI for the most crystal clear printing. Anything below that, our system will kind of flag and notify you of, a bit of a resolution issue there. So you will get notified ahead of time if you do have lower resolution files in there. In addition to that, you're going to want to include bleed and safe margins on all of your print files. We recommend adding an 1/8 inch of bleed or 0.125 inch of bleed to each side, just to ensure that when the books are actually being trimmed, no important elements of your comics are being cut off, whether that's text or imagery. We also, for that reason, include these safe margins in there, just so you have an understanding of where to keep important elements of your comic out on. And as you can see on this template here on the right, the yellow margin right there will be your safe margin, and then the green margin outside of it will be your actual bleed area. On these templates as well, we do have them available on our website for anybody that's looking to put together print files. We do have our trim lines and full lines also highlighted on there, just so you have an idea of where your comic will actually be cut. In addition to this, we also recommend to ensure that all fonts are embedded or outlined in your files. When you are exporting your files, you're going to want to do so as PDFs in CMYK. Just for the best color accuracy, our website does auto-convert all of our files from RGB to CMYK. So if you do export as an RGB file, we will automatically convert that to CMYK before we end up printing it. And then finally, and arguably the most important, just be sure to double check your page order and also your spine setup. We will, kind of mention there as well that with the spine setup, and we'll kind of talk about it, but there is one sort of binding that we have available that will have a spine. If you do use our staple binding, you won't actually have a spine file itself. But when uploading, files to our website, just be sure to double check that all the files had kind of dropped in the correct slots, and everything does look as accurate as you intended. You can go to the next slide. Just some things to kind of consider. So after you've put together your print files, you're going to want to decide on an order method on our website. Now with this, we do have two kind of order methods available here. The first of which being traditional, it's really exactly as it sounds. You essentially buy your books in bulk, and then you will handle the fulfillment process, meaning you'll be in charge of shipping and send these out to your backers. The pros of this, you do have a little bit more quality control as you're kind of seeing every copy before you send it out. There are more availability for higher profit margins. So with Mixam specifically, as you kind of order more books, our price per copy does get cheaper. So the more books you order, the higher profit margin you have available. And also there is a bit of increased customer interaction. So as Sam mentioned, if you have any little add-ons, any figurines, maybe a sticker, maybe a business card, you have the ability to kind of throw those into your package before you send them out to your backers. Cons in this part, it is a little bit extra work to ship. because you will, have to kind of pack and send them out each individually. You do have to invest a little bit more money up front. And then also you can be stuck with inventory. So say, you had 200 backers and you ordered 250 copies. Once you send out those 200 copies, you might end up being stuck with that 50 copies in addition to that. With that, though, and kind of to combat that, we do have our other method, which is our print on demand method or print link. So wherever you see print link in this presentation, it does refer to our print on demand method. This is, again, as it sounds, books are essentially printed and shipped as they are sold. So you'll set up a print link on our website, and as customers purchase them, we'll then receive the order, print your book for you, and ship it directly to your customer. So in this case, we will handle all of the fulfillment process. Because of that, it is a little bit easier to organize and control. It is fully customizable. So if you want to remove the Mixam logo, if you want to change up the color scheme on it, if you want to add a picture of yourself, you can do so. It is completely free to set up, and there's also no seller fees. So say it costs $5 to print a comic book and you're someone that sells it for 15, you'll receive that full $10. No fees will be taken out from that at each time you complete a sale. The cons of print on demand, it can be a little bit more expensive per copy since we're printing really one or a few at a time. There is a little bit more limited customer interaction because you don't have the ability in this case to include any business cards, stickers, stuff like that, and also a little bit less impact on quality control. Just a little tip for myself, I do recommend kind of using both of these, maybe placing a more traditional order method up front, and then after the fact, setting up a print on demand or a print link and making a little bit of passive income on the side, and also to kind of just continue sales after the fact. You can jump to the next slide. And just a little bit about choosing the right print specs for your book. So the first thing, and arguably the most important thing that you're going to want to consider, is the binding for your book. And the reason for this, and I kind of touched about it earlier on, but if you do end up selecting a perfect bound book, you will have a spine file. If you don't want to include any text or any, maybe a logo element, something like that on the spine file, you can keep it completely blank. And just, based on the color of your book. But we do see a lot of creators that might include, the name of their publication, maybe their name, and also a logo on that spine file itself. If you're someone that has a little bit of a smaller book, we'd recommend a saddle stitch or a staple binding. In this case, you will not have a spine file, but as you can see, the page count is a little bit more limited in those cases. If you aren't really intrigued of any of these options as well, we do have spiral and wire O binding also available, which is kind of similar to like a notebook binding that you would see. You can go to the next slide. Oh, cool. The next thing you'll want to consider is your paper type. So paper weight is a little bit self-explanatory, but we'll touch on that as well. The biggest main differences with paper types that we have three kind of main ones available. We have a satin, a gloss, and an uncoated. Satin, in this case, being matte, it is coated. It has a bit of a smoother finish and a slight sheen. It's great for readability, and we recommend this for comics that have a lot of text. On the other hand, we also have gloss paper available, which is also coated. It has a bit of a higher shine, and it's great for displaying graphics and artwork that have bright color included in them. And then finally, we also have our uncoated paper, if that is of interest. With the uncoated paper, I will preface the colors are a little bit understated, I will say. The paper itself does have a soft finish, and if you're someone that wants like a sketch cover, for example, it is great to kind of write on, so we would recommend uncoated paper for those cases. On the other hand, we also have our paperweights. We have 70-pound, 80-pound, and 100-pound text. Really, as I mentioned, it's kind of self-explanatory. The 70 and 80-pound are a little bit lighter, and they do offer some minimal transparency. So if you do have, heavily art-induced pages on both sides, we would recommend a little bit something heavier like the 100-pound, which offers no transparency. And I did put a little preface in there as well. Our cover paper is a little bit thicker and has a more premium feel than the inner text paper. So say you were to choose an 80-pound cover with an 80-pound text, while they are the same paper, the cover paper will feel a little bit thicker and a little bit more premium than the inner text. You can jump ahead. And then finally, the last and kind of final print spec here will be your cover finish. So for this, we do have Two kind of main ones available that we see used the most. We have our matte lamination and our gloss lamination. Again, similar to the paper types, the matte does mute the color a little bit, provides a more subtle finish, and you can kind of see it here with the cover in the top right. It does have a little bit lower level of contrast in comparison to the gloss on the bottom. As you guys can see, the gloss offers a bit of a shiny finish and also has higher contrast. It is great for repelling any surface dirt, dust, and fingerprints as well. So if you're someone who's going to an event and you have, your comics on the table that are constantly getting touched and looked at by other people, we kind of recommend this gloss lamination instead of the matte. In addition to those, we also have a few other options available that are a little bit more intuitive, but the most common ones we see from our creators are the matte or the gloss. If you're also someone that doesn't want any cover finish at all, we have that available option as well. And before we kind of kick things off, my final tip here would be if you're still confused by these print specs, to order a free sample pack on our website, you'll receive a few different products that are real live examples that have all the papers and all the finishes just, in front of you in person. I think it does help the most when kind of visualizing these in person rather than just me hearing some explanation on them. So if you're interested in samples, you can visit our website and order those as well. And then finally, when it comes to completing an order with Mixam, this is really the kind of general run through of so. You're going to start off, as I mentioned, selecting the print specs that I just went over and entering in your quantity on the product page. From there, you're going to select a design option. In this case, I've assumed that you're someone who's already created your art files and you have those ready to upload. If you are someone that's interested in a design tool, we also have a free design tool available on our website for any of our creators to use, so you can do that as well. In this case, though, we're going to assume you're uploading your own artwork. You're going to select that, add it to your cart, and kind of continue through. Once you do that, you'll receive this pending order that you kind of see here on the right. And really from here, you're going to kind of fill out the tabs in order. So you're going to start off on this first tab here with the artwork, upload all your artwork for the comic, jump over to tab 2, enter in your shipping and your billing information. And once you fill out the first 2 tabs, that third tab will ungray itself out. You can complete the final payment. Before that, and before kind of we send off your order to production, our team will also check off the artwork. We do have print experts that review all of our files and just make sure that everything will look good once finally printed. And I do have those kind of prefaces in there as well. If you're someone who's ready to sign up for an account, we do have our Mixam Kickstarter collaboration link. And you'll have to use the invite code KSSMX when signing up. If you're someone that already has an account and you are ready to print, you can use the code Kickstarter5 at checkout. I will preface, these are for first-time customers only, and the code does expire at the end of September. And now just talking about some benefits of working with a trusted print partner like Mixam. We can kind of dive into it. So starting off and just a little explanation on why your print partner matters, right? For us, we really believe that a trusted print partner has 3 things, and that is quality, consistency, and also peace of mind. Quality, arguably the most important, but I think all 3 of these are honestly important. You do want your work is a direct reflection of yourself. So you want to make sure that the comics you're providing your backers are high quality. They look good. They don't have, any kind of trim marks or any edges in there like that. In addition, you also want consistent products. So if you were to come back to our website for whatever reason, order some more books, maybe you need to order a couple for an event or something like that. You want to make sure that the second and third orders are as consistent as the first order, right? You don't want to provide comics, a certain batch of comics to your backers one way, and then, a separate looking batch another time. And finally, peace of mind, right? As a creator, you want to feel confident, not confused about printing. You want to be able to upload your artwork and send your order off and then kind of just forget about it. You don't want to have to stress about the actual production process and stress about, are your comics going to come in, super blurry and kind of cut up. You just want that general peace of mind once you kind of get to the production stage. In addition to this, you'll also, I'm sure you guys will have tons of questions. And I think that's another important factor of a print partner is just having, getting this technical support and help with these questions, and not only having advice on what to kind of change, but also just doing the actual troubleshooting and fixing of the files themselves. And then finally, you want transparent pricing and production timelines. So with Mixam, and I'll kind of touch on this on the next slide, the price that you see is the price that you'll pay, and production timelines as well, right? You don't want, you might get these books within, 3 days or 3 weeks. You really want that kind of upfront and transparent production timeline with a print partner. And then just kind of touching back on my note, we really want you to feel confident and not confused about printing. And we can jump into the next slide. Oop, cool. And yeah, just talking about what makes us different. So first, and obviously first and foremost, we have printed thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of comics printed worldwide. I think since I've started here in like November 2023, I'm almost certain we've printed a comic nearly every single day. So we're a partner that has done this before, right? We have the experience, our production centers have the experience, and I think that also just makes us a little bit different in comparison to the rest. We also have flexible short run printing options and custom options. I've talked about sketch covers. If you're someone that wants to offer a variant cover, maybe you have a little bit more of an exclusive cover for, your some group of backers, and then a different cover for other backers. We can do variant covers as well. And flexible short run printing, meaning we don't have any minimum order requirements. So if you do need to order 1 copy or 5 copies for an event, we can do so as well. With that, we also have our global shipping and fast turnarounds. So Mixam specifically, we do have websites in the US, the UK, Canada, Australia, and Germany. If you aren't in any of those regions, we also have international shipping available on our UK website. So you can order on our UK website and we'll get your books shipped directly out to you. An example of just one of our turnarounds, we've estimated for 100 comics about 5 to 6 days for production, and then another few for shipping, depending on the method you select. In addition to that, we also have real support from real experts. So in this case, we do have a few different ways to kind of contact us. We have an online chat feature, which you can kind of see on the right there, that is in the bottom right of our website, and is always available for anybody to use. If you prefer to contact us via email, you can do so as well. Or if you prefer to kind of call in to our office and talk to a live rep, you can do so via phone as well. And jumping into my final slide. Cool. Just to wrap things up, just some tools that we have available to help kind of bring your vision to life. So we've kind of talked about it a little bit. We do have our instant quote calculator here on the right. This is where you kind of get our estimated shipping date and also the production price for your entire print run. You'll see on there as well, you can you'll make note of the printer that the books will actually be printed on, and also the pricing. If you were to set up print on demand, we'll be transparent with the pricing per copy on there as well. In addition to this, we also have a professional knowledge base. So if everything that I'm saying makes no sense to you, we have a very wide array of articles and blogs on our websites that provide all of this information as well. We also have a digital self-publishing guide that really takes you from the process from start to finish. In addition to this, and I've kind of touched on it, 24/7 customer support. So if for whatever reason you can't get a hold of a Mixam rep, we also have our virtual AI assistant Mixie that helps around the clock. In addition to this, we have our digital flipbook preview and proof. So just helping you visualize what your book will be printed without it actually being printed and in front of you. We have these available for every order. And I highly recommend you kind of check these before sending things off to production. And then finally, and I've kind of touched on it earlier, our print on demand service, which is PrintLink. It is great for setting it up after the fact, after that traditional order, making that passive income on the side. And if you're someone that doesn't want to sell it on the PrintLink page itself, we also have an embeddable website widget and a Shopify app as well. And that's really all I have. Just kind of prefacing it again, if you're someone who's ready to sign up, you can, visit that website, use the invite code KSSMX to get started. If you already have an account with us and you're ready to print, you can use code Kickstarter5 at checkout, which does expire at the end of September.
Awesome.
Cool.
I think we're going to get into some real world insights. We've got some questions for Xander, both from a creative and print perspective. And I know we want to dedicate time at the end for questions from the audience. So let's just dive right into it. Xander, the first question I have for you, and I always like to ask creators this, is just what inspires you to make comics in the first place? Where does that drive come from for you?
What inspires me to do comics in general is just having a great medium to explore, characters and stories that you have ideas for. And then when it comes to the drive, I think for me, it's having a vision for where you want to go, where you want to take your stories, and realizing that the first, in order to get there, you're going to have to take, the first step and really start that journey. And, just looking right here, but keeping that far goal in mind of like, maybe one day I'll have multiple comics to explore this story. That's really what keeps me going.
Nice. Was out of curiosity, was there a particular comic that sort of like showed you the way, so to speak, where you read it and you're like, oh, I can do this? Um,
It's really hard to narrow it down to just one. I had the growing up, like, foundationally for me, the Marvel Adventures Spider-Man comics. They really did a
mm,
great job of like kind of condensing and kind of like having an anthology approach to kind of like the most foundational Spider-Man stories. I felt like repackaged them for a younger audience, and that was me at the time. So I really aim to bring that to the next generation with my own characters, I guess.
Nice. Yeah, I always love hearing about people's inspirations, and you can definitely see it in reflected in people's works as well. Uh,
Yeah.
Sweet. The next question I have for you then is, how did you build an audience for your Kickstarter campaign, and what helped most in getting people excited to support it? Because that's obviously a big consideration for people starting out.
Yeah, for me personally, obviously I had a YouTube channel that I built over the course of years doing various creative projects. So I would put a lot of, videos about the project I was working on out. What are the things I'm excited about? What should people be excited about? What they can expect? Most importantly, what value they'll be receiving for the work that you're putting into this project.
Right.
And then of course I had a mailing list. I share it with my friends and family, which was a huge deal. And then Andrew Lehman, who was working on the cameraman book with me that I did actually do on Kickstarter first. He actually had a lot of comic peers, and he knew a lot of people that had access to more traditional forms of media. So it's whoever you can talk to. We made a press kit and sent it to people. My takeaway was, just use the best avenue that you have access to. If that's your Instagram, YouTube, it doesn't have to be one thing, but however you feel like you can get your project in front of people is generally going to be the best.
I love too the note about bringing people along for the process and helping them build the sort of care and appreciation for it even before the Kickstarter campaign comes out, right? I think there's something
Absolutely.
I one other piece of advice I often give is, putting work out there for free allows people to, I think, create an emotional response and buy into it, and it just makes the idea of wanting to make it the better version of it or the most ideal version of it a lot easier once it comes to a Kickstarter campaign.
Yeah, I'll say that I did that in the form of video, just talking about my favorite parts of it, and then I had a freebie, as we call it, on my website where that would people could jump into my email list and they could stay up to date on future projects. So that was a great way to kind of like accrue an audience, but they also got something for free in the process.
Awesome. Well, the last question I have for you, Xander, is what's one thing you wish you'd known before launching your first campaign?
Gosh, I think it was how much everything would really cost. I think that you said early on, you were like, add that 20-30% or whatever the number was exactly to your budget, because there will be things that will change. There will be things you didn't expect. And I did my best to estimate these things, but my first time doing it, I was really, I really did my best to forecast, but things change. And now I'm ready to do it next time. We're going to be doing cameraman number 2 very soon as well, which I'll be announcing after this on Kickstarter. So but I'll have all this experience going into the next project.
Great, cool. Well, thanks for the exciting exclusive on the webinar. So we're looking
Yeah, of
forward to
course.
that. Awesome, Chris. I'll turn it over to you for some questions.
Cool. Thank you, Sam. Yeah, Xander, I guess just to start off, can you talk a little bit about your experience working with Mixam and also what you think creators should keep in mind when choosing a print partner for their comic?
Yeah, so obviously after you put all the work and effort and time and labor into making your comic, it doesn't seem like it'd be a lot of fun to like go around and feel paper and XYZ. But I did end up ordering a lot of samples from different websites, and immediately Mixam jumped out to me as something that I as a format I wanted to put my comics on. I felt like I could pass them around to people, and they weren't gonna like rip or tear or anything like that. The colors were really nice and matched my expectation of what they were. And then being able to flip through the comic digitally online, I think was the big sell for me. I think I was able to say, okay, I'm confident this is how close it's gonna look, you know, when I have it in person. And for me, that was huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we know that samples can be a little bit more pricey, so we definitely recommend using those online tools, to your best abilities, just to kind of assure yourself that you're going to get the comic that you want to see.
Yeah.
In terms of like selling, did you sell it all at any conventions or events? And if so, what was that experience like, in comparison to some online distribution?
Yeah, I still feel like, you know, selling stuff online for my website, I have a really personal touch. That was always like before I did Kickstarter, before I had a comic ready to sell, I really wanted to like have that exchange of like, here's the thing I made, I'm giving it to you. That was really important to me. I haven't been to many conventions yet, but the ones I've been to and the ones that people that I do work with have been to that have my comics there, they recognize it from the YouTube stuff, and they say this is really cool, or my kid watches this, or I watch this. And that's really exciting to have that face-to-face connection and be like, I'm making this for this person and they enjoy it. And that's really great. That's fulfilling for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. We definitely recommend always kind of, promoting it on your socials. Even if you're small on socials, it does go a long way. And then
Absolutely. Yeah.
finally, just to kind of wrap things up, what is one thing that, you wish someone had told you before you printed your first comic?
Hmm. Be prepared for how fulfilling that would be, and be ready for you know starting the process over again, because you got to have that second comic now. You know, you got that first one, but
Yeah.
now I got to make issue two, and that's the work. I'm like, okay, let's get back on. Let's do it again.
Yeah,
There,
absolutely. We see a lot of creators that right when issue one gets out the door, they're back to the drawing board for issue two almost immediately.
there really
Absolutely.
is something to having a physical book at the end of all of it, right? And having that on your shelf or having copies to give people is such a great tactile experience that is so unique to comics, right? Is so specific to
Yeah.
this medium. So yeah, I love that answer.
Yeah, I was just mentally projecting what it would be like on my desk or on my shelf or whatever, like until we got there, and I was like, "This is going to get me to the end," you know. Just imagine. So,
Absolutely. Awesome. Yeah, we'll jump in now to some submitted questions. So if you guys do have questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A box. We'll do as best as we can to kind of get through as many as possible here in the last 10 minutes or so. Just starting off with our most upvoted questions as well. So if you guys see questions that you do want answered, be sure to upvote those in the chat box. Just first question, this is kind of for Sam. What genres and story themes represent the most successfully funded or highest number of backers for comics on Kickstarter?
So in terms of independent creators, I will say that horror does really well for the platform. Especially October is our highest performing month in terms of projects that are successful, and that is, there's a Halloween spooky element to it, and that can be kind of a double-edged sword if you're launching something that is not specifically Halloween oriented during that time. But horror does very well. We also have a lot of like romance and slice of life stuff. If you look at Cat Clamia or Phil Falco's content, there's a lot of this stuff about everyday life. And then, Xander's a really great example, but we have a great superhero presence. It's a very traditional comic genre and format and stories to tell, but I think everybody's got a superhero idea at the end of the day. And either we have some more traditional stuff or, I really love Xander's Cameraman because it's the idea of a future where movies aren't very prevalent anymore, and you have a cameraman who's just obsessed with sort of bringing a higher media take, especially now in the culture we live in where superhero movies are so prevalent. It's kind of a fun look at the genre as a whole. So those are the top three that I would say. Outside of, we do have a lot of like existing licensed material, but I think for this audience that doesn't necessarily apply, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Question for Xander. What is your best method for creating the script behind your comics?
oh man, so I have two series. One's Bullet Boy, which is basically like handing my childhood self like the keys to all the talent that I have now, and I'm just like going crazy writing my Saturday morning cartoon. And then with Cameraman, I'm working with a proper team for that one. So I would say use something more akin to the Marvel method for my bullet boy stuff. Just what looks fun to draw, what's the story I want to tell here. But for and then I'll go back in and fill all the bubbles in, and I know kind of what the characters are going to say when I'm drawing it. But for cameraman, Andrew Lehman works on the script with me. We go over the outline, we get it approved by the editor. A more traditional pipeline in terms of production there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Just a question for myself from Mixam. Can the different Mixam locations split in order to cut down on shipping costs? We can do so if you do order on our UK website. As I've mentioned, our UK website does have international shipping. We can do so on our other websites as long as you remain kind of in that region. So if you're someone who's in the US and all of your customers are in the US, we can do split shipping, but it will have to be in the US only. If you do order on the UK, though, we can do split shipping that can be international as well. So there are some possibilities for that there. Let's see here. I guess could be a question for either both Xander or Sam, but I would really like to know the best ways to market before and during a Kickstarter, especially for someone with no following. If you guys have any recommendations there.
I've got some thoughts, but Xander, I'll let you start. If you're up for it, I can go.
Yeah, I definitely had a little bit of a plan going into it. I think that, you know, for the pre-launch, it was about letting everyone know that it exists, letting people kind of getting people ready. You know, like for a film, you'll have like a teaser, so you kind of give people an idea of what they're gonna be looking forward to with your product on Kickstarter or your project. What's the genre? What's the kind of the summary of it? What are some of the things that they can come to expect? And then I saved a lot of the bigger beats, you know, with the full trailer I edited and a lot of the post content for like the first week or two of the campaign. But you definitely, that's like the hot spot right around there. And your goal, I guess, would be to get the most momentum in that first 24, 48 hours of your campaign. And that was my focus anyway. But yeah, I would say that, you know, around the time of pre-launch and launching is like where you want to save all your best stuff personally.
Definitely. Yeah, I think, you know, tactics that I'm seeing and things I've implemented myself are, if you're able to give a preview of the book, even if it's just like the first chapter away, our pre-launch page now has a editor, so you can have, and if you see Xander's pre-launch page for cameraman #2, there's text that you can include links, you can embed videos. If you wanted to say, you know, have something people have posted on Global Comics or even, I mean, a Google Drive for a PDF, if you're able to give away a little bit of the content for those people who don't know it. And then if you don't have an audience, I did this a little bit when I launched my game. I really just kind of shared the pre-launch page with creatives that I knew and respected and said, hey, I'm launching this thing. It seems like it's in your wheelhouse. Let me know if you're interested or you want to talk about it further. And, you know, the worst thing that can happen is you don't get a response. And that is okay. But sometimes people will be really into it and they're willing to share it with their audiences or give you a leg up. And, you know, like Xander said, and like we've been alluding to, pre-launch is a really powerful tool. We see in comics a 31% conversion rate of pre-launch followers to backers. So if you're able to get 100 people, that's potentially, you know, 31 people coming in and pledging within the first 24 hours, 48 hours. That can really move the needle on smaller campaigns. And, you know, for smaller campaigns, if you set a realistic goal and you hit it, you're able to build momentum and build an audience that'll help you in future campaigns.
Amazing. Let's see here. We'll go through maybe one or two more. Another question, potentially for Sam. Adding an extra reward sounds cool to attract funders, but will that also backfire because it increases the total fund amount, making it longer to reach our goal?
So if you add, you know, it may or may not increase your total fund amount. I guess it depends on the specifics of what is included in that reward, right? But you want, with a Kickstarter campaign, I like to think about it this way. When I worked at Boom Studios, you know, we would do Kickstarter campaigns for things that would be coming out in the direct market and the book market, right? So traditional comic shops. And the question is always like, well, why should I do Kickstarter when I can just go and get it when it comes out later? Kickstarter really allows you to offer, as we demonstrated with the creative rewards, things that people aren't going to get, and things that people aren't going to be able to get anywhere else. So is it commissioned artwork? Is it, maybe I've done this before where you can dedicate some time with yourself to talk to somebody about their script or their own creative process. Rewards should be additive in that way, but not really detrimental to your total experience. So I think about rewards that way.
Sorry.
No, it's all good as long as you're safe. I gotta go. Yeah, that really comes in the planning stage, right? Of think about what is achievable and feasible for your schedule and your time, and how that could fit into the total campaign, rather than seeing it as a backbreaking or campaign busting kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Question for myself. Someone mentioned it's far more cost effective to do a print run overseas. Why should we choose Mixam instead? We talked about it a little bit in our presentation, but I do think, in terms of the biggest things, quality is a huge thing, right? We do have some examples of videos, kind of comparing books that we've printed in comparison to like an Amazon KDP, for example. So you can really see the differences, excuse me, in the quality there. And I'm happy to kind of share that video and kind of share information with that over our socials as well, if anyone's interested in seeing that. In addition, like I've mentioned, our print experts, I think they help a ton, especially for our less experienced creators as well that may not have done a comic before, may not have put art files together before. They're there and they kind of work around the clock to answer any questions and anything that might, come up during your production and fulfillment process. So those are really kind of the biggest things as well. Think we're about at time here, but if there are any questions that were unanswered, feel free to kind of DM myself. I do run our Mixam socials. You can also email me directly, and I'll drop my email in the chat as well, just in case there are any questions that had kind of gone unanswered there. But yeah, I think that about concludes our webinar. Thank you guys again so much for joining in today. Be sure to look out for those emails. We hope the session was not only helpful in planning your next project, but also printing it as well. And like I mentioned, keep an eye on your inbox. We will be sending out the link to the webinar recording, along with some additional resources to help you guys plan your next comic campaign. Thanks again for being here. We can't wait to see all the incredible projects you guys bring to life. And yeah, take care, guys. Any last words?
I'll just echo what you said, Chris. Thank you all for participating, and thank you to Xander for making the time and sharing your expertise in creative process. It's really great to get, I think these webinars are fun for Chris and I to do, where we get to talk about what we do at the company, but having a creative come on, talk about their own experience and what you built is really helpful and enlightening.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I'll be back anytime you want me.
All right, sounds good.
Amazing.
Bye, y'all.
Take care, y'all.